What will your future look like? The job you do today could be different than the jobs of tomorrow. Some see this as a challenge. At UCF, we see opportunity. A chance for you to grow your knowledge and strengthen your skills from anywhere life might take you. With in-demand degree programs and resources for your success, UCF Online can help you prepare for the future and all the possibilities that come with it.
From the University of Central Florida's Center for Distributed Learning, I'm Kelvin Thompson.
And I am Tom Cavanaugh.
And you are listening to Topcast. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Kelvin. You didn't say the Teaching Online podcast.
I didn't.
No.
I guess I'm thinking brand recognition at this point.
Yeah,
but you're right.
everybody.
We should clarify it.
Everybody knows what Topcast is.
Can I tell you a dirty little secret?
I don't know.
It's just us. It's
Just us and our two listeners. Sure, go ahead.
Just us.
You guys, both of you will be quiet about it, won't you?
There's other Topcasts.
Yeah, I know.
We, I think, best I can tell on Apple Podcasts, Topcast, the Teaching Online podcast, does float to the top.
As we should.
As we should. Some of the other Topcasts are in there, but it seems like we're getting more listeners, but there are other
I've seen the names.
Topcasts.
I have to admit, I can't tell you what they do or talk about. I haven't listened to any of them.
Yeah.
I would just say we allow them to exist in the Topcast world. I'm very generous that way.
Yeah, let's go with that. I think one of them might even be somewhat education related. Then there's some other ones on other topics. But yes, you are correct. We could pretend that I redid this and it's you're listening to Topcast, the Teaching Online podcast. Hey, Tom.
Podcast. Hey, Kelvin. This is Topcast, the fishing podcast. We're going to teach you how to do some topwater baits, maybe a jig or two. We're going to catch those big lunkers. Yeah. I might actually listen to that one.
Just in case you're confused now, this is a collegial conversation about online, blended, digital teaching and learning conducted over a shared cup of coffee. I'm in my "Hello, I'm Johnny Cash" mug here.
I have my I Love Topcast mug.
Well,
I'm drinking out of.
That is some shameless self-endorsement there, but I commend it.
Yeah. I don't often drink out of it, so I'm going to take advantage of it as long as we're actually recording. And we do have video for those who may not be watching this, but listening. For the past several months, we've been recording on Zoom because that is our world now. And you can watch us talk to each other instead of just listening to us.
It eventually ends up on YouTube, and
Yes.
2 or 3 people have watched those videos. And
yeah, thanks, Mom. Yeah. So as you said, this is a collegial conversation over a shared cup of coffee with a couple of colleagues, and that's our conceit. Thank you very much. I'll be here all week.
Yes, alliterative, very impressive.
So we've referenced our coffee mugs, and you've heard perhaps the occasional slurpage.
Slurpage.
What's in the thermos, Kelvin? What am I drinking?
So, Tom, today's coffee is a blend. You know, I'm really more of a single origin person, as you know.
Don't I know it?
Yes, but this is a blend called Frequency from Intelligentsia Coffee. They roast in Chicago and LA, but this bag was shipped from Chicago. They've got places all over the U.S. They go back really into the 90s, so they were kind of an early craft coffee roaster. But we're told that this particular blend, Frequency, is very, quote, versatile, unquote. It works well when brewed in a typical automatic drip coffee maker or via pour over, as I often have my morning cup of coffee, or other methods like what you're drinking I did in a French press an hour or two ago. So it works in a lot of different brewing methods. And while I like it black, it is supposed to be good with milk or cream as well. I don't know if you put any froof in it, but...
oh, yeah, it's totally froofed up. Yeah, it's good.
So it could be very forgiving of the froof as well. So I think it's a pretty good cup of coffee. What do you think?
I enjoy it. And and it tastes good. Thank you for bringing it. It's been nice the last couple of episodes. We've actually been able to share a cup of coffee and seen each other fleetingly in the office as we, safely pour and then quickly retreat to our offices where we can be safe and drink it. But yeah, thank you. It's good.
Socially distanced coffee sharing. How's the connection?
We're not that physically far from each other.
No. Hi, Tom. Good to see you out there.
Through a couple of doors and, a couple of, yards away. So you asked about the connection.
I did.
And I think I like the connection, Kelvin.
Ooh.
You did a good job of, through your much better radio voice than mine, of leaving some audio breadcrumbs for me with some particular
audio
emphasis.
Breadcrumbs.
Yeah. So you really hit that word versatile, right? And so versatile is probably the linchpin on which our connection hangs. And I'm going to say that that the connection has to do with its versatility, because that's very much what we're going to be talking about today.
That is true. Although I'll throw in another one. The coffee is a blend as well. So.
Oh, very good. Oh, It was so obvious I didn't even see it. Yeah,
That's right.
It's right in front of me.
Like water for fish. That's right.
Yeah,
so we'll find out more about.
Again, more on the
that.
Topcast fishing podcast coming up.
All right. It's all kinds of stuff out here. If I only knew something about fishing, you at least go fishing. Now and again, I don't even know. I went fishing once. I played golf once, and I went fishing once. Okay, well, as a reminder, for as long as this current reality of remote teaching lasts, we are continuing a monthly mini-series of field reports in our first Monday episodes of Topcast, the Teaching Online podcast, in which you're listening to, in case you thought you were on some other podcast. And we'll be focusing upon some aspect of this current unique remote teaching circumstance. Meanwhile, on the third Monday episodes, we'll continue on with our guest interviews because, hey, life goes on and we got to keep on trucking. You might remember, Tom, I hope everybody remembers, that back in episode 69, which was field report number 4, how are we doing? Hearing everyone's voices through data. We said, quote, we've got a lot in the frying pan as we get ready for fall 2020, as we try to make that term as safe and effective as possible. So we hope to be able to provide an update on those efforts informed by these data when the time is right. So that's kind of where we pick up our fifth field report. It's we're only picking up part of that statement. Obviously, we can't give data on the fall term because, hey,
it's July when we record this.
That's right. And this will release right at the top of August. So we'll be poised, as you're listening to this, we'll be poised to start the fall term. So we can't time travel into the future. Wouldn't that be nice? Because I would just skip ahead a couple of years probably. But no, we're poised to start the fall term. But we can talk about what we're planning to do in the fall, what we have in the frying pan, so to speak, to make the fall term as safe and effective as possible. And here's some more connection for you, and then I'll be quiet. We've spoken previously in, God help us, multiple episodes about the importance of differentiating between actual online courses and remote instruction.
It's a theme.
It seems to be. Again and again, we talk about it. And back in episode 67, we spoke about the value of a more online every semester strategy, whereby we prepare more faculty and more courses to be truly online. But not everything can be online. I know that's a shock, but not everything can be online. And as our fall terms start around the country and around the world, many of our institutions are planning for some degree of face-to-face teaching, and that is certainly the case at UCF. And then finally, picking up on what our guest Cheryl Costantini suggested at the end of episode 70, in her parting words of wisdom for the fall, she said, the key to success will be flexibility. In this episode, Tom, I know you're, wake back up, this is all preamble. In this episode, we plan to share part of how we're planning for flexibility at UCF within the subset of fall 2020 courses that are meeting face-to-face. And what do we call that approach, Tom, that we're going to talk about today?
We call it BlendFlex. I'm adding my own special effects.
I like this, very special.
Yeah. So it's something that we are calling BlendFlex, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to describe that that teaching strategy, what we think its affordances are, how it helps us, maybe some of what its limitations are, because it's not a panacea, but it is our plan for delivering a lot of our face-to-face instruction this fall. So maybe it might be useful to sort of start about what we kind of think the context of this fall will be and why we need something like BlendFlex, which we will define in a moment. So we know that this fall, for anything that's happening on campus, whether it's in the classroom or outside the classroom, we have to maintain this maximum flexibility. And so in this case, for instructional delivery, we need to maintain physical distancing guidelines. The university is trying to enforce that, and in fact, they've come up with new room capacities for every room on campus. What we're calling COVID capacities, which represent 25 to 30% of the actual capacity of that room. In some cases, like in our lecture halls, they've physically roped off seats, so you can't even like put them down and sit in them. And they've put the little tablet arm down in the seats that you can sit, and they're 6 feet apart, front and back, and that's all you're going to get in that room. So we know we don't have enough physical rooms large enough to move all of these courses that we want to teach to larger spaces that would fit all of those students. And we know we don't want to reduce the capacity of these courses to match the new COVID capacity, because that's only 25 to 30% of the actual enrollment. That would be really bad for educational access and frankly, not so great for our tuition revenue. We also don't want to create some sort of instructional class system where some students get, say a group of students want a face-to-face experience or need it because of the demands of that particular course or their program, but only some can get it because we just don't have the space. So we don't want to create this sort of haves and have-nots system where if there's a face-to-face experience to be had, it ought to be had equitably. And we also know in any given class, at any given time, any number of students may be having to quarantine or self-isolate, or maybe even the faculty member. So you might have students cycling in and out of your class for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and maybe not even sick, but just having to not be there because you have to wait to see if you get symptoms or something. So they're able to progress on their academic coursework, but they can't physically be there. So all of that, put that into the soup pot and stir it up. What kind of a solution can you come up with to meet all of these kind of various requirements? I've been saying the more complex the context, the simpler the solution needs to be. And the closest thing we've come up with to sort of a Swiss Army knife solution is this idea that we've labeled BlendFlex. Now, to be fair, we didn't make up the term BlendFlex. We've seen that and heard of it in a couple of other places. There was an Inside Higher Ed article that referenced it, which, as you and I were saying, interestingly enough, they were inspired by something we did at UCF that we don't recall. We don't recall what we did.
Thanks. Glad that we could help.
Yeah, glad that we could help. I suspect maybe some of our experience with blended learning, we host an awful lot of tours and we talk about it at a lot of conferences, and so who knows. But we've defined BlendFlex for ourselves here for this particular context in this fall 2020, and hopefully that's it semester, but we'll see. And the idea is that it'll hopefully give us that flexibility to accommodate all of these various circumstances that I just kind of went through.
Now, it is probably useful, though, right, to differentiate a little bit between how we're using the term BlendFlex, what we mean by that, and probably the more popularly used and often said now HighFlex, associated with Brian Beatty from San Francisco State University, right? So see if this differentiation sounds right to you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think as you compare the two, HighFlex and our use of the term BlendFlex, HighFlex, complete student choice about how to engage with a course, and a significant reliance on asynchronous design for maximum flexibility. Whereas BlendFlex, there is some student choice, but there are some student restrictions as well. And maybe you could argue there's a bit more emphasis on synchronous elements You think that's true?
I think that's true. And so maybe I can describe a little more concretely for somebody who's still scratching their head, and I don't blame them.
Because, hey.
So HighFlex, you can come to class or you can participate online, and you can change that at any given point. BlendFlex, the idea is that you don't have as much autonomy. You will be assigned a time when you can come to class. Mm-hmm. So for example, say you have a class of 100 students, and it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. A group of 33 students will come Monday physically. A second group of 33 students will physically come Wednesday, and then the remainder, say 34 students, will come on Friday. And then the other 2 sessions of that week where you're not physically in the classroom, you will participate remotely, either synchronously or asynchronously. And the reason why that is important to some faculty here is because if we had a HighFlex situation mm-hmm. and more students than our COVID capacity could accommodate showed up. Mm-hmm. So say 50% of the class showed up, but we can only accommodate 25% of the class. Well, now it's up to the faculty member to be the police of the enrollment cap and has to quickly decide who gets in the room and who doesn't get in the room. And I personally don't think it's fair to put faculty in the enforcement business of room capacity. Yeah. They have enough to worry about this semester just teaching in this crazy environment that we're in. Yeah. So this is a way to frankly just manage the unique circumstances of the COVID-19 social distancing, physical distancing requirements. They can decide, faculty at their discretion, depending upon their own attendance policies, to turn it into a HighFlex if they want. They could tell students, you can come or go if you want, but then they're volunteering for that enforcement of room capacity if they're comfortable with that. Yeah. Or they could tell students, you have this one day you can come face to face. You come Mondays, Kelvin, and if you choose not to come on Mondays, that's your choice, but you can't come Wednesday or Friday. That means that whole week you're consuming or participating in the course virtually, and that might be okay. Again, we want to try as much as possible to allow faculty to decide their own attendance policies. Yeah. Although our provost here has really encouraged faculty that this is not the time to be strict on attendance. And
I think that's a real good message, actually. Continue to be empathetic, continue to be flexible all the way around best you can. So again, some student choice, like you could choose to come to face-to-face or not, if the faculty member provided an attendance policy that allowed for that. So hypothetically, BlendFlex would allow for that. But some student restrictions, your day is Wednesday. If you're coming, it's Wednesday. It's not Monday. It's not Friday. It's Wednesday. So here are, I think, what are some major tenets of BlendFlex? And I'm inserting this in because I know you've been talking about BlendFlex a lot. And it's easy to press play. So I'm just going to insert myself in here, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. Yeah. So I think, recapping some of this, so major tenets of BlendFlex. There's video streaming and or recording of face-to-face sessions, which means there's some technology in the classroom, which we could talk about. All students have the same opportunity for meeting face-to-face. For instance, as you say, 3 cohorts assigned meeting day, so there's not a class system, but they could choose to avail themselves of that opportunity or not. And particularly good for classrooms in which the COVID capacity, as you say, does not allow the entire group of enrolled students to attend while maintaining social distancing. I've heard some folks say that's the only candidate for BlendFlex. I don't know that that's really true, actually, but some people would say, well, hey, if you're in a big old classroom and you can do enough social distancing to allow the entire enrolled capacity of the class to meet, then you don't get to do BlendFlex. Well, you could. If you still want to do BlendFlex, you could, right?
Yeah, you could. And I've been asked that in classes where they've been able to find a larger space and they don't have to reduce the meeting pattern, so everybody can participate for all Monday, Wednesday, Friday, say. However, you may still have the situation where students get sick
Yep.
or have to self-isolate or something happens. And you're going to still want that flexibility, the technology, infrastructure, and the practice to be there to allow that student to continue to make academic progress for the 3 weeks that they have to sit in a dorm and in our quarantine dorm before they're cleared to come back to class. So even in a situation where everybody can come whenever they want, you may still need to apply some of these strategies.
Yeah. So the overarching goal really is flexibility, right? But a couple of caveats, see if you'd agree, because these are things that I keep hearing misperceptions about. BlendFlex is not a modality. It's not online, blended, BlendFlex. Also, BlendFlex, blended, not the same thing. Right. BlendFlex is not a requirement for faculty. We're not saying you have to. And oh my gosh, as straightforward as we think this is, communication is really key. Communication to faculty, communication to students. You've been communicating your little ears off, mouth off, lips off. I don't know. You've been communicating a lot.
My parts, yes.
That's right.
It's been a bit of a challenge, as clear as we think it is, but we live with it, right, 24/7. But in talking to deans and faculty and now students and looking at Reddit forums and stuff where there's just clearly not an understanding of what it is. There's some misperceptions, let's put it kindly, out there about what things might be, and trying to get out in front of that. And it's been hard because we're trying to do this on the fly, and as these messages are going out and people are hearing things, there are narratives and gaps are being filled before we can even create the communications or the training to correct them. But I think we're getting in front of it now. We've got some communications that have gone out for students, and I think those have been really helpful. Our news and information team has been great about trying to promote that through social media and through the parent pages and things like that. And we've got stuff for faculty that is just poised. It's almost done, getting ready to go out for training. So by the time this comes out, all of that should be out there. I will say too that I think I don't know the details, but I think Arizona State is doing something called ASU Sync. And I don't know if that's just HighFlex or if it's HighFlex with elements of BlendFlex, but there are other schools experimenting with the same sort of technology and strategy. I know a lot of schools are doing some stuff with HighFlex, and I know Brian has been consulting and talking to a lot of folks about HighFlex and how that works. This just seemed to fit our context here. And maybe it's worth just giving a couple of numbers, right, about how much adoption we think there is right now.
Although, to be clear, we really don't know and won't know.
Yeah, it's possible. Maybe not until later, and we'll maybe do some surveying or something. But so right now, we know that about a third of UCF's fall courses will have a face-to-face component, whether that's fully online or blended.
You mean fully face-to-face or blended?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Fully face-to-face or blended. And that represents about a little over 1,400 sections face-to-face and 340 or something sections of blended. And it's something like 10% of the student credit hours, though. So, a third of the sections, but 10% of the credit hours, which tells you how much space is going to be in those rooms.
Yeah, that's right.
Of those 1,700 or so sections between blended and face-to-face, we've got a rough count of about 644 that have explicitly put notes about BlendFlex in the course notes.
BlendFlex, it shows up as a word that we can search.
Right, and that's how the registrar has helped us try to figure out where it's being deployed. Is he ran a query and just searched on the we gave a standard message for the course notes to the colleges, and they're supposed to stick it in the course notes,
but they might not.
644 places it's shown up. And so that's about a third of the total sections that have face-to-face components. So about a third of UCF sections have a face-to-face component. About a third of them have BlendFlex. So that's about the penetration. And again, like I said, the stuff that's happening on face-to-face on campus, it's only about 10% of the credit hours.
Yeah, I think when I looked yesterday, it was like 13% total, I think, has some kind of coming from something with a face-to-face. But yeah, there's a lot more people online or remote than face-to-face.
Yeah.
That's right. I to your point about maybe later we'll know, I think we'll probably, with our colleague, Dr. Patsy Moskal, we've talked before about surveys, I'm sure we will have very thorough surveys of our faculty and our students in the fall, and I would imagine that we would ask some questions about BlendFlex.
Yep.
Was BlendFlex employed? How did it go? And we'll know more after the fact. But I suspect we'll find that the numbers don't match exactly, that there are some folks who decide at the 11th hour to, I'm going to try that BlendFlex thing, and it wasn't ever in the class notes or in the syllabus, or I was going to do BlendFlex, but I abandoned it because I got confused or frustrated or something.
Yeah.
So those things happen.
Yeah, and we've tried to give faculty as much autonomy to implement this, however it makes sense for their style and their pedagogy. There are very few thou shalts that we're putting into the BlendFlex model.
Because how could we?
Well, how could we? But there are things that we are saying are kind of non-negotiable.
Yeah, tell us about those.
For example, one is that in the classroom, the faculty cannot actually write on the whiteboard at the front of the room.
Why is that?
Because the camera can't see it.
There you go.
It's really that simple, which means that you're definitely privileging the face-to-face audience over the 2/3 of the course that aren't in the room, maybe more. Yeah. So we're saying you have to use the document camera. Every room has a document camera. And when you're done with that, you could even take those pages where you've written things and scan them and upload them into our LMS as study notes. That document camera can be projected in the classroom. So the in-class experience really isn't any different than if you stood in front and wrote on the whiteboard. The class can still see what you're writing, and so can the remote students. Another thou shalt, non-negotiable, is that unfortunately, you are tethered somewhat to a 6-foot range. Kelvin on video has disappeared on me. In front of the camera, behind the podium in the classroom. So, that's where the webcam is, and that's where the microphone is mounted on the podium. And if you step too far away from that, the remote students will neither see nor hear you. Probably more important to hear you, especially if you're projecting PowerPoints or you're writing something on the document camera, but they have to be able to hear you. And we have done some tests with masks and as far back from that podium as you can get with your back against the wall, and it works. We can hear you. But if some faculty, they like to move around when they teach, and that's part of what makes them such a great teacher, and so that'll be an adjustment for them. But really, these are just practice.
They're minimal.
They're minimal. We're not asking them to change their syllabus. You still go in and you teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday like you normally would, and just the group of students that sit in front of you changes. There are some considerations like around active learning. Active learning is going to be difficult in rooms where everybody has to be 6 feet apart from each other. And you're shouting over tables and rows at each other is probably not very practical. In some ways, online, using the online tools to facilitate active learning will be easier. And you could involve both students in the classroom and those remote through online collaboration tools for active learning. So some of that is going to come out in our training, and we're going to talk to faculty about, okay, what can you do? What might work better? And what are you limited from?
But obviously, you've been really championing, though, this being fairly turnkey and non-disruptive for the faculty, even though the experience could be enhanced if they do a little bit of tweaking to their course design.
That is correct.
You're trying to minimize it.
That's really part of the message we've been trying to get out, is that you can make this as complicated as you want, and you can redesign your course. And we've been asked questions like, well, do I have to teach like I normally would, or can I flip it and then have discussions that I repeat in the class? I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Do that. But we're not making you, because that would require some extra effort and some redesign of your course. And we get it. This semester is going to be crazy as it is. So we're trying to emphasize the fact that you really, other than some around the edges practice changes like whiteboard or document camera versus whiteboard, you just do the same thing. Now, having said all that, there are this isn't going to work in lab classes where you have to come in and pour chemicals or something. Or it's not going to work really great in performance or some of the visual arts and things like that. So it's not a panacea. It doesn't work with everything. It works really well in a lecture-based classroom, to be frank. But we do think it could work with active learning as well.
I think of it like this, just like in the spring term when we first went remote, we got these anecdotal reports of actual real online courses experiencing really very little disruption when that happened. Why? Because it was designed to be an online experience. They just kept on going, right? And so I think it's really our hope that the face-to-face courses that use some kind of a BlendFlex approach will hopefully experience very little disruption this fall, no matter what kind of curveballs come our way. I think that's really kind of the big idea here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe the last thing I'll say on it is that in the event that we have to go remote again, we're here in one of the COVID capitals of the country right now. The cases continue to rise. So who knows what will happen? We all hope it'll continue as we plan.
Yeah.
But in the event that we have to go completely remote again, these courses will be much better positioned to do that than what we had to deal with in the spring.
For sure.
And like many other schools, we're not coming back after Thanksgiving. So these courses can just switch to that fully remote environment after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So, Kelvin, looking at the clock, do you think maybe I should take a shot at trying to
take a swing?
Take a swing at putting a bow, and we'll mix all our metaphors here.
That's right.
So I think it's fair to say we all need to prepare for flexibility in the days ahead. We don't know exactly what will happen, even 1 month, 1 day into the future.
It's true.
Creative approaches to face-to-face teaching, like BlendFlex, are less prone to disruption and more likely to enable faculty and students to teach and learn no matter what happens, and that's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Well said. And hopefully we're all finding our way toward flexibility. So that's good. I agree. Our coffee's gone. Our time is gone. So we're about to be gone. So until next time for Topcast, I'm Kelvin.
And I'm Tom.
See ya.